All right.
Okay, perfect. We are now recording this session. I want to welcome you all here to our virtual fireside chat with Leadership Long Beach. I am Carrie Cisna, the Executive Director of Leadership Long Beach, and we host these every Friday with different leaders across the city or just on different topics that can help us get through moments of crisis, moments of challenge. And so we're so excited today to have Rich Archbold with us. He works for the Press Telegram and has been in Long Beach for a very long time. And we're just excited to hear your story. It's so timely to get to really explore and discuss the role of media during challenging times. I know we've all been exposed to what's going on in our world right now and how the use of media is really so important. And it's such a tool for leaders to get through this time, and how important it is to have accurate information and to really be able to connect with each other. So I want to just encourage all of you throughout this time, if you have a question at any time, go ahead and put it in the chat box, and I will make sure that Rich sees the question. And also, we would love for you to have your video on so that we can interact with you, if you don't mind, but keep your mic on mute. And we'll also open it up for questions at the end. So if you have a question during this time, feel free to write it in the chat box, or you can ask it live in person at the end. So Rich, thank you so much for being here and for all you have done for the city of Long Beach throughout many years of reporting and making sure that we have accurate information and we can stay connected to each other. And so we're just excited to hear about your leadership journey. If you could just tell us a little about who you are and what your role is with the paper and how you got to that place. So kind of just walk us through your journey and what you think the role of the media is during challenging times.
You want to know how I got to where I am? This is going to take all day. Marion, you've got to be here all day. First of all, let me welcome you to the Archbold Manor. I've never done this before, so bear with me. This idea of Zooming it's sort of beyond me, especially with my bad hearing. So speak up when you can. I've got to tell you, the time we're going through is unprecedented. I'm going to get into my life in a little bit, but I just want to give you some idea of what I'm going through, and probably all of you are going through the same thing. But a couple of things for me. This is now my 75th day of isolation or quarantine. My wife has taken my car keys and won't let me go anywhere. I don't know, she says she cares about me, but then I say, if you care about me, you'd let me go out on a trip or something. She has let me go out 2 times, 1 time for gas, but we don't need gas because we're not driving anywhere. So that's only 1 time. I've covered 2 stories, both tied to the coronavirus. The most major one was the 105th birthday of Sam Sachs, this World War II veteran, which was a terrific story. But if I was going to get the coronavirus, that would have been the day, because there were a couple hundred people there, and I'm wearing this mask, and trying to interview people with a mask is very difficult. The other thing, and Olivia will know this maybe better than anyone, my hair used to be a nice, rich, deep, dark brown color. And now that I've been 75 days in quarantine, it's starting to look different. Like Janie, it's starting to look like your hair. It's getting gray and white, and I can't wait for the barber shops to open up so I can fix all that. You know what I mean? But other than that, life for me has been very good. Our granddaughter Wheatseal just flew in from Mexico City with her mother, our other daughter Kelly, and they're living with us. So we're having the advantage of having a 4-year-old running around. She's liable to come up now while I'm talking. I told her Grandpa Cubby was talking. While I'm talking, she has to be quiet. And she gave me one of these kind of things, blah, blah, blah. So you stay over there, Wheatseal. Don't bother the big people. I'd like to tell tell you a little bit about how I did get started in this business, because it affects what I do now and how I cover the news, especially with the Press Telegram. I'm from Chicago, born in Chicago, grew up in a little suburb of Lombard, Illinois. I like to say I have ink in my veins because I started a paper route when I was in the 3rd grade, delivering the Chicago Tribune, etc. But my first real adventure in journalism came in high school, when I started working on the school paper because somebody told me I could get free tickets to the football games if I worked on the paper. Anyway, I started working there, and when I was a sophomore, I was only 14 years old, the school advisor, turned out to be one of my journalism heroes, Helen McConnell. She taught American literature and was advisor to the school paper. She asked me to go interview Fred Beester, who was the principal. Well, his nickname was the Beast because he was a big man, big for most of the kids. He was like 6'2", weighed 260 pounds. I said, "What's an interview? How do you do that? What do you do?" She says, "Well, all you got to do is go in there and talk to him." So I went into his office, which was bigger than a football field, and I was about 4 feet tall, and I had a little notebook and my pen, and I started asking this man questions. I thought he was going to bite my head off or, send me home to my grandmother or something. It turns out I was with him for about an hour, and here was the revelation. When I left his office, I'm surrounded by about 15 of classmates, and guess what? They wanted to know if he had bitten my head off. What was he like? What did you talk about? What did you do in there for so long? What was going on? And what I learned from that is that people are people, and to this day, and all of you listening now, you all want to know one thing: what's going on? And why is it going on? And who is doing all that stuff? And in the simplest terms, that's what journalism is all about. All we do, and I say all in quotes, all we do is find out what's going on, and then we tell everybody about it, whether it's newspapers or now digital stuff, radio, TV, etc. So I became editor of the high school paper. I went to the University of Illinois in Champaign, where I became editor of the Daily Illini. My most major story there, I won't go into great detail, but I was a senior accepting letters to the editor, and I got a letter from a professor who said he was answering 2 students who had written about how sexually repressed students were because of all these laws and everything. And his letter basically said that premarital sex was fine. All you had to do was go down to the nearest drugstore and get some condoms, and as long as you were socially responsible, what's this big deal? And that would cut down on anxiety, stress, etc., etc. Needless to say, the only mistake I made is I ran this on the weekend of the state high school basketball championships in Champaign, so there were thousands of people there who were getting the newspaper, and they read this, and parents went crazy. What's going on at the university? That professor ended up getting fired, and my first job when I graduated with United Press International was covering his hearing before the Board of Trustees, which upheld his firing. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and his case was upheld. The firing was. From there, I went to Lincoln, Nebraska, covered with the State House, and then Omaha, and then I moved to the Miami Herald. And in Miami, I covered all manner of things, everything from hurricanes to murders to you name it, and I covered it both as a reporter and then as city editor. But my major my major kind of time came in 1978 when I got a call from somebody named Larry Allison. And I didn't know Larry from a hole in the wall, but he turned out to be perhaps not perhaps, he was one of my best friends. He was executive editor of the Press Telegram, and he was looking for a managing editor, and somehow he had heard about me and said, "Do you want to come to Long Beach?" I said, "Where's Long Beach? Where is that?" And he said, "Well, it's near Los Angeles." And I had to look on a map to see exactly where Long Beach was. I said, "Oh, is that where the Queen Mary is?" He said, "Yeah, the Queen Mary is here." Right away, I knew what it was. I came out for a trip. I went back, told my wife, Pat, Long Beach is not a bad place. I was just going to get a free airfare out of it and then just stay in Miami, because we loved Miami, and Miami was a great news town. But I liked Long Beach so much, and Larry, and there was a young copy boy named Tim Grobeatty who I ran into, and I thought, oh, wow, if Tim Grobeatty can work at the Press Telegram, I'm going to work there too. So I came in 1978 as the managing editor, and those of you good in math will know that was about 42 years ago. So I've been there 42 years. I've been in the business 66, and I've covered everything from hurricanes to earthquakes to you don't know how many murders, all kinds of government meetings, too many to count, et cetera, et cetera. But this coronavirus is unprecedented. I have never seen anything like this. All of my colleagues I talk to, they have never seen anything like it. The most common thing about it that makes it so unprecedented is that it affects everybody, everywhere, and you can't escape it. Things like earthquakes, plane crashes, etc. They're sort of located specifically in a place and affect a certain number of people, and then that's it. This virus thing, though, is all over, and you all know what that means. You can't go out to restaurants, you can't go to church, et cetera, et cetera. My wife and I had a discussion on Mother's Day. She very badly wanted to go see our two other granddaughters who live in Corona, where our other daughter, Katie, lives with her husband. And she finally said, she didn't say, I don't care about the virus, because she does care. She said, I want to see my granddaughters on Mother's Day. So we thought it was relatively safe to drive in the car, go see our daughter there with the granddaughter who's living with us, and our second daughter, and it went fine. But that's the only time she lets me out of the house to go do stuff that she wants to do, and then to go buy gas. I can go buy gas, but we're not doing that very often. So the next question that I just sort of like to deal with is if you were me, or if you were Tim Grobeatty, if you were Chris Hare, who is our city editor of the Press Telegram, he has one of the toughest jobs I've ever seen as an editor. He's doing everything by remote. There's nobody in our newsroom, hasn't been for about 10 weeks or so. So he has to do everything from his home, essentially. And that's very hard to do, because part of being a journalist and covering the news, especially the newspaper, is a newsroom where you see all your colleagues and you bounce off ideas and you talk to each other and you say, did you see what the Mayor Garcia said? Did you hear this? Did you hear that? And you miss all that. But despite that, our staff is doing a great job in doing the main thing that we're supposed to be doing, and then what every newspaper and media outlet is supposed to be doing, and that is telling people what's going on, just like when I was in high school. That sounds simple, of course, but it's the devil in the details, and I'm sure you'll have questions about this. it gets into issues like, okay, you're saying what's going on, but how do you know exactly what is going on? And it's not just telling people what's going on, it's why is it happening, how is it happening, and what can be done to prevent it, et cetera, et cetera. For instance, when this whole thing started, my first conscious part knowing about this virus were stories coming out of China, Wuhan, and they were pretty vague stories, and it seemed to be centrally kind of located in China, nothing to worry about. We now find out it was in other places, and the media, the press, that we should have been doing a better job of telling people what was happening. The other thing we're noticing now as we're moving along is that people will criticize the press for not warning them early enough. And then at the same time, there are those who are saying, accusing the press of calling this thing a hoax, that it really wasn't as serious as it turned out to be. So very often we in the media and in the press and newspapers especially, we do get caught in the middle with people, and we get mixed up with television, the New York Times, the Washington Post, et cetera, the fights going on in Washington with the president and CNN and that sort of thing. One thing we know in Long Beach, which of course is to our favor and our benefit, is as far as we know, our numbers have gone up hugely since the coronavirus started. More and more people, almost sometimes on certain days, triple, quadruple, sometimes five. The numbers are 5 times what they might normally be. And what does that tell us? It tells us a couple of things. One, obviously, the news is really important and it's affecting everybody. So more and more people want to know what's going on. The other thing that's more important almost to me and to us is this means people trust what it is we're saying. Because I learned a long time ago, if people don't believe what it is you're talking about, then why would they bother listening to you? They would turn you off. And I'd like to get into this aspect of it for a minute, Carrie. And it has to do with credibility. And I know a lot of my younger friends especially, they say, well, how are you dealing with these attacks from whether it's Trump or whoever it's from? It could be Republicans one day, Democrats the next day. But how do you deal with that? Doesn't that make it hard on you? Well, the answer is, yeah, it makes it hard. But again, in all of my 60-some years in the business, I have dealt with attacks on the press all of those years. I can even go back to 1952 when Adlai Stevenson, he was running for the president of the United States on the Democratic ticket. And old Adlai, who I sort of liked, I was kind of young then, but I liked what he said. He said, newspaper editors are men. And he said men because there weren't a lot of women editors back in the 50s. But he said, newspaper editors are men who separate the wheat from the chaff, and then they print the chaff. And that's pretty minor criticism by what's going on today with some of the things you hear on tweets and social media, but it was a criticism. And we in the press, we took it very seriously. I can remember when I was in Miami in the 60s and the 70s, we would have at least 2 or 3 meetings a year with all the editors, key reporters, et cetera. And all we talked about was our credibility. And if people don't believe what it is we're saying, they're not going to read what we're presenting to them. And so we did all manner of things, everything from customer service to running corrections. The basic thing we told each other was, hey, take your time in researching a story before you print it. There's a man in the AP who said, get it first, but first get it right. And so this idea of criticism, certainly to me, is not new. But I do take it very seriously, and I think everybody in the media should take criticism seriously and answer it as best you can. Obviously, there are some, I'll hesitate, I won't say the words, but there's some critics that they're so far off base, it's almost not worth the time. But most people have honest questions, and they want to know, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why haven't you done this, that, or the other thing? And so we have tried to do that as best we can. And the other thing, we've written stories about this, and that is the misinformation that you hear on social media. And all the time you're hearing people they'll call the virus a hoax, so they'll say, you know, China's the main culprit, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You've heard all that. And people have asked me, well, how can we separate the truth from fiction? And that can be difficult, but I do have a whole list. If anybody wants a list, I could write a column easily on all the things you can do, which is what we do in the business, because we're fact checking what we write all the time. The easiest thing I tell the average kind of reader or viewer is to go to sources you do trust, like the Associated Press. The Associated Press is very reliable, very dependable, you know, most of the time. And if you're ever in doubt about certain things, you can check with the AP. There are other fact-checking groups you can check with, which I won't take the time to get into all of that now. But that is important, because with social media, that's another phenomenon that I didn't have to deal with years and years ago. And now I'm hearing that from all manner of people who will say, I saw this on Facebook, I read this somewhere on an Instagram, or et cetera, et cetera. Very often they don't know the source. It's just something they heard, they saw a headline. That's very hard, that's very difficult to deal with, but we have to do our best. And that's really all we're doing. We are trying to do our best. The numbers are up, but that doesn't mean our revenue necessarily is up from advertising. The newspaper industry is still in serious trouble in terms of revenue and hiring people. And if you want to get into that, we could get into that a little bit. That obviously is a problem. And the bigger the paper gets, obviously it helps to have full-time health writers, science writers who can understand what is a virus and how does it work. A simple thing like the New York Times did this the other day, and I was talking to my wife about it. I should have written something about it myself. The question was, where did 6 feet come from? Why is it 6 feet that I should be separate from you, Carrie? Why isn't it 5 feet? Why isn't it 7 feet? Why isn't it 6.5 feet? Who came up with 6 feet? Well, the New York Times did a whole page on this, and it was just very interesting. And they got into how far the virus can go if somebody sneezes or whatever. And 6 feet seemed to be kind of an average distance. And you could have made it 7 or 8 feet. If you really want to be safe, make it 12 feet. But that sort of thing, those are just facts that we try to deal with. The other thing that we are doing, and so many media outlets are doing, is we're trying to look for positive stories, inspirational stories of people who have contacted the virus and who have overcome it. One of my stories that I did that got so much comment the other day was on a 68-year-old World War II veteran named Jerry Salas, who is also a musician. He has cancer from Agent Orange in the Vietnam War. He has diabetes, but he got a cough. And he was in the hospital, the VA hospital in West LA, for 48 days. And doctors 2 times thought he had died. and was going to die. Talked to his daughter who thought dad is about to die tomorrow, sort of thing. And he survived, and he came out in a wheelchair and gave everybody the thumbs up. And it was a great story. We're looking for stories like that. We're getting constant requests usually from nonprofits who are doing all this really good work. Meals on Wheels, delivering meals, the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, things they're doing with child care for children of essential workers. We have a series now we're calling The Brave Ones, and these are people who are doing very courageous things to help other people. And that's another thing that's come because of this virus. We have noticed that people seem to be kinder to each other. Families are getting closer. People have more time with each other in their homes because it's sort of a negative positive. They have no place to go, or you shouldn't be going, like dining out to the beach, etc. But the positive sign is people, I think, are getting to know each other better. I did a column on a woman who was tying white ribbons around trees in her neighborhood in Lakewood. There was another man who made wooden eggs for Easter, and he gave one to each one of his neighbors, 130 of these wooden eggs to put out in their front yard so kids could go by and for an Easter egg hunt. There are all kinds of stories like that. The difficult job for us right now, and it sort of has been, but now as places are opening, as a journalist, we're trying to figure out, should they have opened sooner? Are they opening up too soon? We're getting a lot of phone calls. We were getting a lot of phone calls, especially from restaurant owners, saying, this is killing us. This is killing us. We've got to open the restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. And that's going to be happening fairly soon with a lot of restrictions. The other thing that makes it difficult is different governmental entities are having different rules. For instance, in Orange County, they opened up their restaurants last week. I know someone who works at two restaurants, one in Orange County, one in Long Beach, and he can go to the one in Orange County, but not to the one in Long Beach. So there are all kinds of issues like this that we are covering, and I think we're doing a really good job with that. But this is dragging on and on and on. I talked to one of our editors yesterday about this issue of reporters and photographers, and perhaps their mental health, because they are working overtime to do the job, and we are telling them to take it easy, take it as easy as possible, take days off, let us know. Don't feel like, you have to work, 7 days a week, and that sort of thing. And it is a wearing process, and people do wear down if we're not careful. So we're trying to tell people, and when you take time off, take real time off. Get rid of the cell phone. Don't listen to that. Turn that thing off, or turn the TV off, and just sort of enjoy life. So I could go on and on, Carrie, but if there are questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I see Jerlene over there. She's probably got a million questions. Hi, Jerlene. Can you hear me? Oh, she's on mute.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. I've been listening to you for a very long time.
Oh, you're the best. You're the best.
Pleasure to just continue to hear you. So I have a question, comment, but I'll wait until we get to that point.
Oh, okay. one point about how this has affected me. It has not affected me personally that much, other than this idea of my wife keeping my car keys. In terms of the columns I write, I've been doing a lot from the home sort of anyway. And what I'm doing basically is I'm looking for people who were affected by the virus, and then just writing about them. For instance, this woman who gets takeout orders for the families at the Ronald McDonald House. There are stories like that all over the place. People are just doing all kinds of good things, and they've always done a lot of this, but more of that is happening now, and it gives you hope for the human race. I think the negative that I see, and it's starting to happen already, and I'm sure most of you have seen it, where a disaster like this will tend to unite the country or unite a city, unite a state. It happens while the disaster is right upon us. But then as the disaster kind of lets up, places are opening up now. Now politics is starting to enter into it. You're starting to see these old battles from Washington to the rest of the country, the Democrats fighting the Republicans, partisan politics, and we're heading into an election, a presidential election in November. So you all know what that means. Everybody is trying to get themselves either reelected or newly elected. And that puts the media into between a rock and a hard place a lot. And the main thing that I observed is there's a polarization in this country, and it doesn't seem like we can get out of it, no matter what happens. If you're a Republican, you feel this way. If you're a Democrat, you feel that way. And then a lot of people will say, we've got to count on the independents. Where are these independents? Where are the millennials? And then even the millennials get criticized for being too young and not knowing what's going on, and they don't vote anyway, and stuff like that. So I'm not saying today is worse than it was 50 years ago. I mean, World War II had to be a horrific time to go through for our grandparents, etc. All these different wars we've had to go through. The Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, where millions died, had to be horrific. So this isn't the first. This isn't the only time we've been tested or challenged, but it is frustrating, especially the political infighting that's going on. And we in the press, how do we deal with that? How do we cover it? And we're doing what we always have done, and that is we try to get to the truth of situations, and we try to be fair, and we try to be balanced in what we report to people. But I think that the job is tougher now than it was 20 years ago. So, Carrie, are there questions? Do you have any that you'd like to talk about, or other issues?
Yeah, we have one question that came in from Nima, and it says, what Long Beach news story that you've been able to cover during your career has been the most memorable or impactful to you personally?
The most memorable story that I have covered?
Yeah.
Oh my God! In 60 years, who asked that question? That is a good one, though. There have been several. I guess probably the most important one was that one I referred to when I was a senior at the University of Illinois, that professor who sent me that letter, and he sent it to me personally. I called him up on the phone. I sort of had known him from some other things. And I said, are you sending me this letter for my personal edification? Or do you want me to print it in the Daily Illini, the newspaper? And he said, if you had any guts, you'll print it. Well, I printed it. And of course, as I said, he got fired. And people talked to him later saying, did you mean for that story to be printed? And some people thought he might lie and say, I didn't want that printed and blah, blah, blah. But he was very, he stood up and said, yes, I asked Mr. Archbold to print that, and he had the courage to do it, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, I was getting calls from all over the country. It became a national story. It was in Time and Newsweek magazine, the New York Times, Associated Press, everybody was calling me for comments every day. It was a huge story. And because of that, I got my first professional job with United Press International out of Chicago, and they sent me off to Lincoln, Nebraska, which I wasn't sure where Nebraska was at the time. I had to take a train because I didn't have a car. And but that story got me basically my first start in professional journalism, and so that was very memorable. There have been a couple others I could mention. When I was at the Miami Herald, you talk about this idea of criticism. I was covering this man. He was mayor of a make-believe set of there were a set of islands off Miami that weren't connected by anything, and he wanted to build causeways and build hotels, etc., on those islands. And environmentalists were dead set against it, saying it would ruin fishing, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I was covering that for the Miami Herald. Well, this man got so upset with me, he called my boss, the executive editor, and said that he was going to refuse to talk to the Miami Herald as long as Rich Archbold was covering that story. Well, I heard that, and I was wondering a little bit, what's my boss going to say? Because that's not done that often. My boss told him to go to you-know-where and said, he's going to keep covering it, and it's too bad for you, because if you don't want to talk to him, you're not going to get your story into the press, into the Miami Herald. Well, that lasted for about 3-4 weeks, and he finally called me up and said, well, you win. I said, this isn't a battle. You know, I'm not battling you. I'm just doing my job. And anyway, we became good friends after that. So that was memorable in the sense of these attacks that we come under and how we defend ourselves and defend each other and defend our colleagues, because it's not 100%, but the people I've worked with and known all these years, they're like all of you out there. They're just doing a job. They're trying to report on what's going on in situations the best they can. And this is where the issues come in. It's covering these issues of racism and things that CCJ deals with all the time, whether it's hate crimes or what's going on right today, you know, in Minnesota. I heard before I came on, Carrie, that Trump was having a press conference. I don't know what he had to say about it, but I know there have been a lot of issues in the United States involving racism, and it's not just been in the South. These have been newspapers all over the country. And when I would talk to Gene Lensner about discrimination against the Jewish people in Long Beach and how he couldn't find a home because of all these restrictions, etc. Well, I wasn't here at that time, but I know that the Press Telegram and a lot of other papers, they really weren't covering those issues very well. And the people who had no voices, or who were the poor, low income, you know, etc. The media has let them down over the years. It's coming back, and I think in the 60s with the civil rights movement, American newspapers finally said, hey, we've got to start telling the stories of these people. And like I say, it wasn't just in the South, but I was in Miami at the time. And, you know, like protests of African Americans going to a drugstore and sitting on seats where they weren't supposed to sit, you know, or sitting on a bus in the front where they weren't supposed to sit. Many times those were not stories printed anywhere. And of course, that's different now. And we get criticized by some people because we're covering that side too much. So, and I think that's one of the things that's leading to polarization too. The country seems so divided on some of these issues, whether it's immigration or other issues. But we keep going. A free press is still the most important thing I think a country can have. If you were a dictator in a country, the first thing you get rid of is the press. You get rid of that free press. You don't want those people out there either criticizing or asking tough questions, etc. But that's what we're supposed to do. But in a fair way, and not in an attack kind of way.
That's a perfect segue to this next question that came in from Janie Roeder. She says, as an organization, Leadership Long Beach truly models the way for bringing people with diverse points of view together. Janie, do you want to ask your question? You want to take your mic off?
Hi, Rich.
Hi, Janie. Talk up. Can you talk up? I can't hear anything.
I think Leadership Long Beach has such a great model for bringing people together with diverse points of view. And I'm wondering how we can spread the wealth across our polarized country.
Boy, yeah, that's such a great question. And yeah, I don't have an easy answer to that. I mean, so many people are working very hard to do that. Leadership Long Beach, CCEJ, you know, Centro Cha. The problem I see is that so many groups like that get labeled sort of as liberal. People want to label everybody right away. They want to know, if you're a Democrat, and automatically people say, well, you must hate Trump, or vice versa. If you like Hillary Clinton, there's something wrong with you. I mean, I don't know how to solve that other than to do what Gene Lensner, I love that guy so much, and what he said was that you have to treat everybody with respect. You have to treat them with an openness until they don't deserve that. And of course, that's where the problem is. When does someone not deserve your respect? Like I say, if you're in the press and you want to be fair to everybody, you don't want to be fair to an axe murderer, do you? Or you don't want to be fair to someone who is a predator who is a pedophile, like that Epstein guy was. The problem we have, though, is we do have a court system, and we can't just automatically say someone is guilty, etc., you know, without a trial. And we run into that in these videos that we see where it seems so obvious that a crime has been committed, like in Minneapolis. I mean, that's just horrendous. And it seems to me most people would just like to say, fire those police officers and be done with it, and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if that's answering it, Janie, but do you have any ideas on that?
Well, I do think you mentioned kindness and compassion. You know, I know with Leadership Long Beach, my favorite part of the program, other than the people in it, were the leadership principles. And so I think the more that we can embody those principles as individuals and within the organizations that we're part of, that's going to go a long way. But I do have concerns, because you just mentioned something about the first thing a dictator does is get rid of the media. And this morning, with CNN reporters being arrested in Minneapolis, to me, that's a sign that we're headed in the wrong direction. So I think the embodiment of kindness and compassion is more important now than ever.
Oh, that's great. I'm gonna talk to the editors about this. And the editors that I worked with and the reporters, they would agree with you 100%. But it helps to talk about these issues. That's why not having the newsroom, we would talk about things like this, and that's kind of lacking with trying to do it by emails and on the phone. But I think we can all do just a better job, and this is it's reinvigorating me to write more about it too, and like what you're doing at the university with the ethics center. I mean, that's what you're doing, and I know you keep wanting us to do more with it, and we should. And how is that doing on the campus, where you're trying to get ethics into all the classes? And that's a great idea.
I think it's one step at a time, one person at a time, one day at a time now, for sure.
Well, that reminds me of something that Beverly O'Neill, I learned from her. This was years ago. There was a lot of gang warfare in the city, and the Press Telegram, we wanted to do something about the violence. And so we got together and we called for a summit over the weekend with police officers, et cetera, all kinds of different groups. And the first meeting, an all-day meeting on a Saturday, was at the convention center. And we had set up chairs for, I don't know, like 500 people. And I got there early. I was there about 45 minutes early, and I was with Beverly, and there wasn't anybody in the room. And I said, Beverly, this is terrible. What if nobody comes, or what if it's half full or something? She says, Rich, all it takes is for one person to come. And if you can have an impact on that one person, it will all be worthwhile. And I've remembered that, and we ended up filling. The room did fill. They had problems getting there, but traffic, etc. But that was a positive answer. Her answer could have been, yeah, you're right. This is a waste of time. I'm going home. But she said one person at a time, if you can do that. And that's just a great attitude.
I'm with Beverly, as always. And at the university, it's especially meaningful to hear that, because we have so many first generation students.
Yes.
And so by impacting one person, it's impacting multiple generations, both directions. So it's kind of exponential impact, which is very important.
Well, and then you see somebody, you look at all these well-known, you see somebody like a Martin Luther King, what he had to endure. How many people want to go through what he went through to do that? And there's so many people will withdraw from that sort of thing, and they don't want to cause a fuss or whatever. And that's part of this too. I think though we can all learn from each other. I think example is so good, especially with kids, and to teach your kids. It's interesting. I have 3 granddaughters now. They're 3, 4, and 5. So I got them at these different stages, and they are so smart. And I'm beginning now to talk to them about like what's right and wrong and what's good and bad. And it's interesting to see how they pick up on that. And they certainly pick up on if I was yelling around the house or doing, quote, bad things, they would see that and think that was okay. I'm afraid there's too much of that going on too. But it's another thing we have to deal with. Anything else, Carrie?
Yeah, let's open it up. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Jerlene, you said you had a question or a comment. Would you like to unmute yourself?
What happened to Olivia? I see her.
Oh.
If Olivia, why are you so quiet? I can't hear her.
I love listening to you, Rich. I could listen to you all day long.
Okay, well, I'm here all day. You know, I'm doing a really good story, I think, for Monday. You talk about positive things. St. Anthony High School, they're having their graduation, and of course they couldn't have their traditional kind. So Gina Rushing McGuire and the principal, etc., they decided to film every student graduating in their cap and gown by having them walk across the gymnasium floor, go up on the stage, get their diploma in the gymnasium, and they've filmed them all this week, all 131, 5 minutes apart. They had all the social distancing rules. They let in two adults, and they usually were the parents. And I've talked to some of the parents who said they missed the traditional, but in some ways they said this was even better because they had a front row seat watching their son or daughter, graduate. And that's being creative and doing something really out of the ordinary. They're filming right now. They're filming the keynote speaker and other speakers, and they're going to put all this together into like almost a full-length movie, interspersing in history of the school throughout. And it's going to be something they're going to have done in about 3 weeks, and then they're going to make it available to everybody online. I think some of these graduating seniors at St. Anthony will remember this more than the traditional graduation. So that's just another lesson.
Yeah, it's forcing us to be creative and more efficient. I love that story. So Jerlene, would you mind speaking up and asking your question?
I don't know if I just wanted to just thank Rich for being who he is. I met him during Leadership Long Beach, and the week before retreat, I had written a letter to the editor. And the day going up to the retreat, the letter was ran, and then I get to, on the mountain, and I meet Rich. And I remember having a little bit of an emotional breakdown, and Rich standing right there with me. And from that day, I've just followed. And I just want to say I'm thankful for you. You have been an inspiration. I guess I could even call myself a bit of a groupie. And just hearing him talk about some of the the things that he's made possible. Like this is like old school. This is one of the forums that the Press Telegram covered of the community due to violence that had taken place. I have a whole, just a notebook of them. And one thing,
a copy of that?
Yes, you can.
That's great.
And one thing that I know that, and it was a question that someone had asked, like, how do we spread it around, is making sure that voices are heard. And one thing that I know that when Rich did that, or has done that, and back in 2006, 2007, there was an issue that polarized Long Beach, and Rich made sure the community's voice was heard. And I remember submitting an op-ed, and it was ran anonymously because I was getting death threats and different things. But it was a phone call, and I said, hey, and you ran a piece from Dr. Lydia Holly, and I have all of it. So I just want to say thank you, and I hope that someone else is watching you, and that they are going to carry that legacy. Because right now, media, it's we don't know what we're going to get.
I know. Well, thanks, Jermaine. I love you too. I mean, thanks for that. That keeps me going, and you've made my day. Thank you. You're the best. You and Olivia. Where's Olivia?
Well, we only have a few minutes left, so if anyone has a final question, I just want to open it up.
No, Rich, one thing that you bring to us is that you have such great experience. You put everything in perspective, and you know, you have a real feel for went before these times, and I appreciate your stories so much. I've been reading a lot about the times during World War II lately, and it strikes me that everyone going through that, just like other major events, is they didn't know when it was going to end, and they didn't know what life was going to be like at the end of it, and yet they persevered. And you are always so positive, and you give us hope that we're going to get to the end of this. We're going to get to the other side, and we're going to be better for it.
Well, thank you, Olivia. I mean, I try to do that all the time, you know. And the other thing I've learned is when I was very young, we were always told as young journalists there are two sides to every story. Well, what I've learned over the years is there's more than two sides. I mean, there's 5, 6, 10 sides, and you've got to get a lot of people on some of these issues before you really know what is happening, or what, maybe if you're the mayor or city council person, what should you do with some of these issues? And you need to talk to a lot of people. And again, that's where the open mind comes in. Try to be as open as possible. Obviously, eventually you do have to make a decision, but hopefully it'll be a better decision. So thanks for that, Olivia. You're the best. Anything else, Carrie? I see, oh, there's Christina over there. Where'd you come from? Has she been over? Is she mute?
She's
This
been
is a funny thing. There's Kathy.
Rich, I have been patiently listening to your words of wisdom, as I always do. So I never want to take up your airspace, because I will just...
I can't hear.
Can you hear me?
It's all garbled, Carrie. She's good.
Yeah, Christina, can you speak into your mic? Can you hear me, Rich? Can you hear me? I think we have a little bit of a bandwidth problem because of the cameras.
It's getting a lot of static.
So let's turn our cameras off and...
Let me see. Rich, can you hear me now? Rich, can you hear me?
So Rich, we're turning off our cameras because it helps with bandwidth. So can you hear us?
I don't think so.
I think we may have a
I think we
little
may have
bit.
lost him.
Okay, can you hear us, Rich?
I can't hear it, Carrie. I can't hear it. It's all garbled.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because
There's
of...
static.
Here, let's see if I can...
Should I do something?
No, we're just turning the videos off, and that should help clear up the bandwidth. Can you hear us now? Oh, no. Okay. Well, we have run out of time, and we have lost sound. So I will go ahead and just say thank you so much, Rich, for being here and sharing your story. And we all want to just tell you we love you. Yeah. Thank you all for being here and asking great questions.
Bye. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later, Rich. Thank you for being here. And for the rest of you, if you want to join us next Friday, we are going to be meeting with different food banks and just hearing about what's happening with our different food banks around the city. They've seen an increase in demand and numbers, and one of our alumni from Boeing is going to be moderating, Maria Pasasea. So please join us. We look forward to seeing you same time, same place. And have a great weekend, everyone. And thank you so much, Rich, for being here and what you do for our city.
Thank you, Carrie.
So-
Well done.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Oh, this was a great, great topic. So timely.
Yeah.
Such an important topic.
Okay. Here's one.
Have you recovered sound? Let's see. I'm gonna stop recording now.